Johnson warns against Trump's demand for the Senate to go nuclear to end the shutdown. House Speaker Mike Johnson, RLA, warned against President Donald Trump's demand for the Senate to invoke the nuclear option to end the government shutdown. Johnson was asked during his Friday press conference about a late-night Truth Social post in which Trump demanded the Senate get rid of the filibuster and its 60-vote threshold to ram through the GOP's federal funding bill by a simple majority. Look, I'll just say this in general. As I've said many times about the filibuster, it's not my call. I don't have a say in this. It's a Senate chamber issue. But the filibuster has traditionally been viewed as a very important safeguard. If the shoe was on the other foot, I don't think our team would like it. 60 votes are required in the Senate to overcome a filibuster and proceed with debate and a final vote on most pieces of legislation. Senate Democrats attempted to get rid of it when they last held the majority in order to pass reforms that they accused Republicans of blocking, but they were blocked by more moderate members of their own party. If Republicans successfully got rid of it now with a move colloquially known as the nuclear option, Johnson warned Democrats would then use that standard in the future to pass progressive policies while sidelining the GOP. The Democrats, look, they've said what they would do. They would pack the Supreme Court. They would make Puerto Rico and D.C. states. They would ban firearms. They would do all sorts of things that would be very harmful for the country. And the safeguard in the Senate has always been the filibuster. But again, not my issue, not something I get to even weigh in on. The shutdown is in its 31st day after Senate Democrats blocked the GOP from advancing its short-term federal funding bill 13 times since September 19th. At the current tallies, 5 more Senate Democrats are needed to vote with Republicans to overcome the filibuster. Trump, apparently fed up with the impasse, posted late on Thursday night, "It is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option. Get rid of the filibuster and get rid of it now." Just a short while ago, the Democrats, while in power, fought for 3 years to do this, but were unable to pull it off because of Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. Never have the Democrats fought so hard to do something because they knew the tremendous strength that terminating the filibuster would give them. Well, now we are in power, and if we did what we should be doing, it would immediately end this ridiculous country-destroying shutdown. If the Democrats ever came back into power, which would be made easier for them if the Republicans are not using the great strength and policies made available to us by ending the filibuster, the Democrats will exercise their rights, and it will be done in the first day they take office, regardless of whether or not we do it. Johnson said he interpreted it as Trump expressing his frustration with the situation. What you're seeing is an expression of the president's anger at the situation. He is as angry as I am, and the American people are, about this madness. He just desperately wants the government to be reopened so that all these resources can flow to the people who need it so much. While the Senate GOP went nuclear once already this year to approve Trump's nominees, the likelihood that they do it again, especially to gut the filibuster, is low. Senate Majority Leader John Thune's spokesperson, Ryan Wassay, said in a statement, "Thune's position on the importance of the legislative filibuster is unchanged." Trump is calling for the nuclear option to kill the filibuster. What's that mean? The peculiar U.S. political phenomenon known as the filibuster is once again in focus. The filibuster is the prerogative enjoyed by the minority party in the Senate to demand never-ending debate to thwart legislation which must be approved by both that body and the House of Representatives. Filibusters once required senators to stand and speak for hours, but since the 1970s, the mere threat of one has been enough to grind a bill to a halt. Almost all bills are doomed, unless supported by the 3/5 supermajority required to end a filibuster. With 53 of the 100 seats in the Senate, President Donald Trump's Republican Party falls short of that fraction. As a result, it was unable to pass a stopgap funding measure, triggering the first shutdown of the federal government in almost 7 years on October 1st. Nearly a month into the closure, Trump revived an earlier call to the Senate to abolish the filibuster using the so-called nuclear option. How did the filibuster come to be? The Senate, envisioned by America's founders to be a highly deliberative body, was created with no mechanism to end debate on a given topic. Senators quickly realized that long speeches could delay action on legislation they didn't like. In the 1850s, the practice of talking a bill to death got a name, filibuster, from the Dutch word for pirate. In 1917, senators adopted a rule establishing that debate could be ended upon a so-called closure vote supported by a 2/3 supermajority. That bar was lowered to a 3/5 supermajority, meaning it takes 60 votes in the Senate to end debate. Filibusters, once rare and grand affairs, have become commonplace, with most of them occurring since 2000. The minority party can use the toll not only to frustrate legislative efforts, but also to slow, though not stop, the confirmation of nominees to positions the president can only fill with Senate approval, including cabinet members, Supreme Court justices, federal judges, and ambassadors. What's the nuclear option for abolishing the filibuster? The Senate could amend its rules again to abolish the filibuster. An effort to formally change the Senate rules could itself be filibustered. But the chamber's nuclear option provides a parliamentary mechanism for modifying a rule by a simple majority vote. Trump also called for the scrapping of the filibuster during his first term as president, during which his party controlled the Senate. The Republican leader in the chamber at that time, Mitch McConnell, concerned that eliminating the filibuster would haunt Republicans when they were again in the minority, ignored the call. McConnell's successor, Senator John Thune, has said he'd protect the filibuster. Democrats faced pressure to end or modify the filibuster from within and outside the party after they took control of the Senate in January 2021. But with two Democrats turned independents, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, opposed, they didn't have a majority for the move. Are there alternatives to ending the filibuster? Yes. Some senators have proposed changing the rule to make it more painful to invoke a filibuster by forcing senators to speak continuously to maintain it. Other ideas are to carve out exceptions for key issues and to lower the threshold needed from 60 votes. Senators have also limited the use of the filibuster twice in the past decade, both times in regard to confirmations of presidential appointments. In 2013, Democrats established that a simple majority vote could advance nominees for lower court judgeships and federal agencies. In 2017, Republicans, who then controlled the Senate, voted to allow a simple majority vote to confirm Supreme Court nominees. For now, most legislation can still be filibustered. So a filibuster doesn't require a senator to keep talking? That's a myth that can be traced to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, the 1939 film in which Jimmy Stewart's character filibusters for heroic effect. The filibuster has often been deployed in reality to frustrate majority rule or simply to rally supporters, as when Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina stood on the floor for 24 hours and 18 minutes in 1957 in an unsuccessful bid to stop a civil rights bill.
Can any bills make it around the filibuster? Yes, but not many, and it's not easy. In 1974, the Senate adopted a procedure known as reconciliation that allows for expedited consideration of legislation related to spending, taxing, and the federal debt limit. Under reconciliation, a simple majority is all that's required for passage, but the process has limits. The Byrd Rule, named for Robert Byrd, a Democratic senator who represented West Virginia for 51 years, requires that all provisions in a reconciliation bill have an impact on federal revenue, spending, or the debt, and that no extraneous provisions are included. Republicans used reconciliation to pass tax cuts in 2001, 2003, 2017, and 2025. The Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, achieved final passage only by using reconciliation, as did President Joe Biden's signature climate law in 2022. Trump calls for end of Senate filibuster to break funding stalemate. President Donald Trump on Thursday urged congressional Republicans to unilaterally end the government shutdown by eliminating the Senate filibuster, urging them to take an unprecedented step that GOP leaders have firmly opposed until now. It is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option. Get rid of the filibuster and get rid of it now, Trump wrote in a Truth Social post. The directive, which came after Trump returned from several days abroad, is likely to upend efforts on Capitol Hill to bring an end to the weeks-long funding impasse. And it immediately ratcheted up the pressure on Republican leaders who have adamantly opposed eliminating the 60-vote threshold for passing legislation as a way to end the shutdown. Top GOP lawmakers have long argued for keeping that threshold in place, asserting that the filibuster benefits Republicans and will serve as a key safeguard against Democrats passing massive partisan reforms the next time they're in power. The filibuster rule is unique to the Senate, and it gives the minority the power to block a bill from coming up for a vote as long as at least 41 senators oppose it. Since one party rarely wins more than 60 seats, proponents have argued that the filibuster encourages compromise and makes it more difficult to enact massive partisan reforms. Senate Majority Leader John Thune earlier this month ruled out changing the Senate rules to end the shutdown, calling the filibuster something that's been a bulwark against a lot of really bad things happening with the country. At the time, Thune said he'd gotten no pressure from the White House to end the filibuster. Thune's spokesman Ryan Rass said in a statement to CNN Friday, Leader Thune's position on the importance of the legislative filibuster is unchanged. The statement had some in his party breathing a sigh of relief. Definitely gives us cover, a GOP aide told CNN. No one in the conference seriously wants to nuke the filibuster, except maybe two. Several GOP senators have echoed Thune's sentiments in recent days in a sign that Trump could face a steep battle with his own party to push through the rules change. Killing the filibuster would take a majority vote in the Senate, meaning Republicans could only lose 3 lawmakers, assuming all Democrats oppose the move. On Friday morning, Senate John Curtis of Utah posted on X that he remained a firm no on eliminating the filibuster, writing that the filibuster forces us to find common ground in the Senate. Power changes hands, but principles shouldn't. But Trump on Thursday appeared to dismiss those concerns, arguing that Republicans should take advantage of their Senate majority to end the filibuster and reopen the government. The president made a similar case during his first term, though Senate Republicans never acted on it at the time. Now we are in power, and if we did what we should be doing, it would immediately end this ridiculous, country-destroying shutdown. If the Republicans are not using the great strength and policies made available to us by ending the filibuster, the Democrats will exercise their rights, and it will be done in the first day they take office, regardless of whether or not we do it. Trump's new push followed a week on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers on both sides signaled potential signs of progress towards ending the impasse, even as they conceded that a deal remained well out of reach despite widening fallout across the country. The Senate is not slated to return to Washington until Monday evening, putting lawmakers just days away from breaking the 35-day mark for the longest ever government shutdown. Critical food aid for tens of millions of Americans is slated to end over the weekend. The White House on Thursday also sought to highlight the stress that the shutdown is putting on air traffic controllers by convening a roundtable of airline industry representatives and union leaders.
and